9-13 start to the season. How do they pull themselves out of it? More importantly, can they? Camille and I dig into it next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Shout out to all of our everydayers and everybody else taking in this content as well, helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcasting network out there. So thanks to all of you guys for that. And again, you can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network each and every game. You can find Camille on the Technical Foul podcast and part of our Locked On NBA coverage every week as well. If you're in the arena tonight for the Pistons, stop by and say hello. So we start there, Camille. Do you want to start with the good news or the bad?
There's actually good news.
Well, that was a trick question because I was going to say I'm struggling to find it. If you have some good, let's get into it. I mean, they're shooting the ball really well. There's that.
Yeah.
They've, we think, gotten healthy. We'll wait to see what it means for KPJ tonight. That's about where it ends. So on to the negatives. I mentioned a couple of numbers that have stood out in this 9-13 start. We have talked ad nauseum about the defense, yes, and the defensive rebounding especially, and how poor it has been. I mean, I don't think we're overdoing it and simplifying it too much to say, look, that's it right there. That the math game, if you're going to give your opponents more field goal attempts, you are going to lose. You know, like I don't even think, and I think this was Doc's point in his, I don't know if I'd call it testy, but an elevated discourse that he had with Eric Name a couple of games ago. I think to Doc's point, and I don't think, to be clear, this is what Eric was getting at, I don't think offensive rebounding is like going to cure anything. If you just say, well, just crash the boards more and you'll be better. Like, okay, like I get it's offensive rebounding rate that we're looking at, but if you're not missing quite as many shots, I mean, I would much rather you just say, get back on defense and let's lean into defensive rebounding there. But that's been problematic. I looked at a few numbers because like that Wizards game, and God bless you and Frank for taking the bullet on that one. I don't know about doing 3 post-game shows that night, but that Wizards game just felt like, okay, these losses happen throughout the regular season. I'd be the first to tell you that. I'm not sure that I'm willing to go there with this one, that it's just like, well, bad teams aren't going to win. Let's not worry. Like, you were in a spot where you painted yourself into a corner with the injury to Giannis, but even some poor play when he was on the floor in the month of November, that you really don't have the margin for error to say, well, we lost to the Wizards. We still got 2 more. We'll get them next time, guys. Like, you kind of have to win all those types of games from here on out, and you're going to have to steal games against good teams because we're continuing to see separation in the East. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Camille, in the last, week or so, the Boston Celtics have beaten the Cavs, the Pistons, the Knicks last night. They're really starting to separate themselves from you. And we mentioned, hey, it might be a good thing that you got the Celtics as one of your teams in those makeup games. Boston's 12-9 and are currently 4 games up in the loss column. The next closest team to the Bucks is the Bulls in terms of the playoff hunt. And, you know, I know they're a game back in the standings. They're 2 back in the loss column. They're as close to the Bulls in the loss column as they are to the 12th seeded Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, and that's not a spot where you want to be at. When you mentioned the Wizards game and we talked about it, and I said, this is a better not lose game. This ain't a must win, but you better not lose. And then they lost. It felt to me a little bit like the team kind of came out as, like my mom would say, like they were too cool for school a little bit, where it was like, hey, this is the Wizards. We don't really have to do as much. We can go out here, we can win this game. And they ended up tricking it off. Because they just, again, failed on the margins, failed in execution, failed on the details here. And the most disappointing part to me about how they came out in that game against the Wizards was that this is the team that just lost 7 straight games. Like, yes, you had just beat the Nets, so you were on a winning side of things for a change. But like, where is that that intensity that you need to come out? Like, we're kind of desperate right now to get these victories. Like, this is the Milwaukee Bucks team that has not won back-to-back games since October, when they beat the Knicks on the 28th of October, and then they beat the Warriors on the 30th without Giannis, which at this point remains like the high point of the season because they were 4-1 at that point. That Wizards game in particular, or the Warriors game, was like, man, that's impressive. No Giannis, and they were able to find a way to win. They had a lot of threes in that game. It was impressive. And it felt like, okay, this is the outline of the team. This team that's younger, that's faster, that's going to play with more intensity, that's going to get threes up. All of these things, it felt like was coming into fruition during those first 5 games. And since then, you've seen energy wane. You've seen usage wane. I mean, the Charlotte game where they inserted Kyle Kuzma into the starting lineup, and the way that they were utilizing Kyle Kuzma, cuts, off-ball action, screens, rolling, short rolls, just being really active off the ball. Then the very next game against the Lakers, he's sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Myles Turner against Miami, where it's like, hey, we understand that they're trying to take advantage of the fact that Miami is small. Miami switches a lot. So you're going to have situations where you can take advantage of the mismatch. And Myles Turner is somebody who loves to punish mismatches. And they did it well against Miami. They didn't win the game, but it was a really good showing for Myles Turner. Haven't seen that again since. And again, I understand that part of why they were emphasizing that, there's no Giannis and the way Miami plays. But Myles Turner has shown if you can get him in situations where there is a mismatch, he is going to take advantage of it. So like, how guys are being utilized, Kuzma and Turner are the two that come to mind for me. First of all, like, if we could just kind of figure a little bit more out on how to utilize them properly more consistently, I think some of the results will be better. And again, it's not just this one thing, because it's a few different areas the Bucks are struggling in, but like when trying to control the controllables, that feels like one to reach for.
Yeah. This was the most disappointing one yet for all those reasons that you mentioned, with the inconsistencies that we had seen. And look, I mentioned the these losses happen type of thing. Scheduling is real too. Like it's, and to be clear, the Bucks have put themselves in no spot to have this outlook, but teams do have a tendency to look at the opponent and say like, okay, it's the Wizards. Like we let's roll out the balls and we can win this one tonight. But one of the things that we heard from Doc Rivers before the Nets game, for a different reason, when we thought like, I don't know how many people are going to be in this building because of the weather in Wisconsin. And there was a lot more than I anticipated, but he was kind of asked too, like, this is going to be a weird setting. Who knows how many fans will be in the building? It's the Brooklyn Nets who have really struggled. Like, how do you keep your guys up for this? And he, kind of laughed it off and said, have you seen we've lost 7 straight games? Like, that's how you keep yourself up for it. And it worked. That's what makes it all the more disappointing, that this is how you came out against the Wizards, because yeah, the losing streak's over, but the work's not done, guys. Like, you're still not in an enviable spot right now, and you still have a lot of climbing to do to get yourself out of there. So it just makes the workload even more difficult down the stretch of the season, we hope, but in this interim stretch here, because I don't remember if it was this show or the radio post-game show where I talked about it, but we're going to have our answer by the end of December. Like with the schedule that's in front of them, the rest of this week is a challenge. The Celtics, the way they're playing, that's going to be a challenge. You have a 5-game road trip. I don't think the games look quite as daunting as they did when the schedule came out, but we also didn't anticipate the Bucks being 9-13 when that schedule came out. So there are some challenges. I don't think in terms of the opponents, your schedule is anywhere near as difficult as it was in November, and you got a lot of off time. So the excuses should be gone. And December's where we got to see it, because if we don't, then I think we have our answer go forward. So what it is we need to see, and some of these things we said they need to fix, we'll start to get into those conversations. Also, we'll touch on it. Something apparently happened maybe yesterday, maybe prior to that, Camille, that set the internet on fire. So we'll get into that conversation coming up after this. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Nobody likes paying rents, but if we must, you might as well get something for it. So that's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay your rent through Built, you have flexible that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, future rent payments, your next Lyft ride, and so much more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. You earn points every month on something you already have to pay. It puts your rent to work for you. Whether you're grabbing food at your local restaurant, maybe you're heading to the gym, you earn rewards on all of that. And Built makes everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. So turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use that link so they know we sent you. So just to wrap up the December discussion, and I saw a few people point this out too, this is the type of copium that I will accept. I believe the Indiana Pacers were 9-13, 22 games into the season a year ago. They had a little more significant injuries. Like, none of their players are more significant than Giannis, but they had guys out more long-term. And look, the Bucks had KPJ out for 20 games and Giannis out for 5. So yeah, let's not diminish that. They had a number of other guys that missed time. But and that was the team that I kept looking back at before that exact checkpoint was pointed out too, because when the Bucks beat them on New Year's Eve, I want to say Indiana was like 16-17 or something like that. 18. Okay.
Pretty close.
So I knew they were right around 500, just below, and then they took off in January. I think there's a skeleton of a team that can do that in this. Obviously, it's getting to be dwarfed by the other data, but we got a 5-game sample size that shows you, hey, look, they were much different to start the season, and 4 of the 5 games were against really good teams, right? So there's something in there. But if you're not, and what do we got left in terms of games here? So I just had it up, Camille, in my handy dandy spreadsheet I was telling you about before the game, but through the month of December, the Bucks will play 34 games. So really, where the Pacers were, to me, that's the baseline. 16-18. Like, if you are not within that close of 500 coming out of December, you're in big trouble, right? Yeah. Like, if instead of 16-18, if God forbid it's 13-21, 14-20, something like that, 15-19 even, like, then it starts to get pretty late, pretty early.
It does. It really does. And I do wonder how the Bucks are going to utilize the little extra time that they have here with the NBA, cup situation going on over the next, 2 weeks, really, at this point, week and a half, or something
really
like that?
Up until the week of Christmas, because they have now, 4 instances of at least 2 days off in the month of December, and 2 of those are at least 3 or 4. And I think 3 of those 4 come in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like they play tonight, Wednesday, they play Friday, then they play Saturday. So they have a back-to-back this weekend, but then they don't play again until Thursday the 11th. Then they have a couple of days off, and they don't play until Sunday the 14th. And then they play Thursday the 18th, and then they kind of gets back into that normal swing of things here. I saw an article on The Athletic from John Hollinger. It was around the cup in particular, of like the weight that it's putting on players in the sense of how games are being ramped up and just the amount of games. And one thing that really stood out to me was that in the article that came out at the end of Monday night, so after the Bucks had played the Wizards, he mentioned that the season is only 42 days old as of the close of business on Monday night, but 5 teams have already played 22 games. 22 games in 42 days. One of those teams was your Milwaukee Bucks. The other 4 were the Hawks, the Cavs, the Suns, and the Mavericks. So just like the heavy load that the guys are playing right now, I do hope that this little mini break for the cup can kind of help in a sense, a little bit of just tired legs, getting things together there. But I don't know if that's going to be enough help to fix all of the problems that we've seen. But I think it's a positive for them to have coming out of this part here of the schedule and kind of getting into this December schedule, which, as you mentioned, is going to be a real important like inflection point on the season. It feels like, how can you turn around this 9-13 start? Like, this is not where the Bucks wanted to be, expected to be at this point. And honestly, I just want to see them over December. If they can win 3 games in a row, let's get a winning streak, an actual winning streak, at least 3. Would love to see them stack wins. Like, that's what they need to start doing. Stacking behavior, stacking wins. But again, it comes down to, do they have the right personnel to do that? Do they have the right focus to do that? Are they being instructed to do things in the right way? So they're going to have to all come together, not just the players, the coaching staff too, and making sure that this is a team that is operating at its highest potential.
I mean, I would ordinarily say 9-3. I don't know that we've seen enough of that to really trust that you can see that. I do see a path to 8-4 in the rest of this month of December here for the Bucks, and that would get you to 17-17 going into January, where your schedule does, and this is the tough part for the team, is we talked about weathering the storm and turning things around, riding the ship to get into January, whatever analogy you want to use. Great. It picks up in January. So, like, the work isn't done there. And I mentioned this a couple of times. I think last year, you and I talked about this. You look back at the 2-8 start, and, you know, thankfully it was early in the season. And that was one of the other talking points of, like, well, it's the first 10 games and these types of stretches happen. It's just more visible because where it is on the calendar, you know, maybe. But you look back at that start and said, you know, if the Bucks would have played at the win rate they did throughout the rest of the year and went 6-4, they're the 3 seed instead of being in the 6 seed and really fighting for your lives and positioning down the stretch. So you look back on that and say, okay, it's imperative to not get off to a slow start this year, especially for what we haven't touched on yet. And then that 7-game skid happens. But it's not only that. Since the 4-1 start, which feels like a lifetime ago, they've gone 5-12 in that. Like, that's a prolonged, that in itself is basically a quarter of the season where you've been a 5-win team. And, you know, I think when Giannis first went down, and we all pointed to the numbers of with him on the floor, they're the number 1 offense and play at a 58-win pace. With him off the floor, they're number 30 and they played a 14-win pace. And I think we all looked at it and said, like, okay, that's a little dramatic. They're not a 60-win team with him. They're definitely not a 14-win team without him. And then we saw that stretch and you thought, I don't know, this does kind of feel like, 12 years ago. So, long story short with it is it's a prolonged stretch now. It's not just the losing streak. It's not just Giannis being injured. And it's really starting to feel like, just as we applied those first 10 games to the but from last year, like, there's the chance is incredibly high that this 17-game stretch has basically cost you a chance to be a playoff team. In other words, one of those top 6 teams. Like, the die may be cast now when you see some of that separation that's starting to set in, that your lot may be, okay, we have to fight to get into the play-in tournament, and that is our ceiling now.
Yeah, I think I might be a little bit more optimistic in the standings side of things, where like by the numbers, they got a shot to still climb up. The other part for me though is like, but do I have the confidence in believing that this team can actually go and get that? And that's the part right now where I struggle.
Where you just got to see it to have
Yeah,
that
like
belief.
I got to start to see some things from this team, because the bones of it, the idea of it made a lot of sense in the offseason. And during that 5-game start to the season where the Bucks were a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, it felt like, okay, like maybe we're seeing they were top 10 in pace in October, where it was like, okay, we're starting to see some of the things that they were talking about. Still weren't top 10 in 3-point attempts, but that is what it is at this point. But to see them drop, like even the pace that they played in November, and yes, they're without Giannis for 5 games in the month of November. I get it, but the pace that they played at in the month of November was actually a little bit slower than their pace all of last season, where they dropped to 24th in the league in pace in the month of November. And that, again, not the framework of what this team was designed to be. So it's like, we saw the flashes at the start of the season. Can you get back to something like that? Or can you find something else that works better for your team right now to get you better results? And that's the part where it's like, I'm not sure of the pathway forward, but if they can come out and show us something, I mean, Detroit's a great place to start.
That's where it's going to have to start tonight. So we'll take a closer look ahead at that and these 3 other games this week. And it's a very interesting 24 hours for the Bucks and outside of the Bucks. We'll get into that conversation next. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. So say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number in all of the contacts. You get the same quality service you had before, but for a fraction of the price. Setup is super easy. You keep your number, and then you're up and running in minutes. So ready to say yes to say no? Then make the switch at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Upfront payment of $45 required. Limited time new customer offer for the first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Before we get to the news, well, the social media of the world the last 2 days here, a couple other numbers to throw out there. So after that loss to the Wizards, I started to make this point, and then we just morphed into the rest of the bad we've seen. But you knew they were efficient shooting the ball, and I looked back, and then I was stunned to see, like, holy cow, they hit 21 threes in this game, and had to look up and see how many times has a team lost a game when making that many threes. And it was actually a lot more than I anticipated. But then you see, oh, wait, 55%. Okay, how many times has a team lost hitting 21 threes and hitting them 55% of the time? And it was like 7 times. And all of them have come in the last 3 or 4 seasons. Same with season to date, 22 games in. They are shooting 50% from the field. They're basically allowing the opponent to shoot 50%. It's like 48%. The Lakers are on pace to do that this year as well, we should point out. But it's only happened 31 times in NBA history. And 9 of those teams did have a losing record, but the average wins for those 31 teams was 48. At this point, you get to 48 wins, that's a major accomplishment. So you're the outlier for all the reasons that we've gone over. You and Frank talked about on postgame. We've talked about in quite a few shows. All of our fans and the everydayers know it. They're not hitting the defensive glass. They're not staying in front of their man. They are fouling. And that's the one thing I do want to say that ties into what we're getting to next. this is not a league-wide conspiracy, and this is not Adam Silver saying, I want Giannis out of Milwaukee. The free throw rate is jarring. The discrepancy is jarring. It is rather easy to explain. And I'm not saying the Bucks haven't gotten a questionable whistle a handful of times this season, but you only have one guy that plays that aggressive. I take that back. You have two guys. One of them isn't really getting the calls now, which is pretty standard for guys that are kind of unheralded and burst onto scene in their first year of playing like this, and Ryan Rollins. But Giannis is the only other guy that is going to play downhill, generate that type of contact, and initiate things to get to the free throw line. Kyle Kuzma is another one too. Giannis is not a good free throw shooter. So you've seen the poor free throw shooting from this team as a whole because he's carrying the water with your free throw attempts, and he's going to miss a lot of them. And then defensively, your size, as we have well documented, has been an issue, that you are undersized at a lot of positions, and you're out of position, you're not rebounding the ball, and you are fouling quite a bit. So this isn't what other teams and the officials are necessarily doing to the Bucks entirely. This is who they are. Like, they're giving up more free throws and losing at the free throw line because of those things. So I don't know how you fix that, honestly, that you don't magically just say, guys, try to get some free throws here. Try to play that way. I mean, you hope Ryan Rollins starts to get a better whistle here, since he and Giannis are the two guys playing downhill and getting to the rim. KPJ may help you there too, but they're not going to be, the makeup of this team is not going to be a team that's in the top 10 or even the top half of the league in free throw attempts. It's going to be entirely Giannis. And until you get bigger defensively, you're going to be undersized and out of position and give up a lot of fouls. So of all the things we said have to change, that is one I don't see changing for the duration of the year.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because the free throws are one of those things where it's like a few different things are true all at the same time, right? The whistle that the Bucks get is not the best whistle. You can look at how Giannis gets officiated, how Ryan Rollins gets officiated, and be like, hey, they deserve to be at the free throw line more often than they currently are. And I would agree with you on that wholeheartedly. I love your point about the amount of guys that the Bucks have that actually touch paint, force contact, and could try to draw fouls. Like, Dame was elite at that. Also great at knocking down the free throws once he got to the line. And the question became this season, like, well, who else besides Giannis is going to step up into that role? Kuz, yeah. Rollins has been driving, just not getting the calls. And that was another reason why I was excited for Kevin Porter Jr. to come back. So, like, that's at least one more guy on your roster that can put pressure on the defense by touching paint and hopefully forcing the refs to utilize that whistle a little bit more. So, like, those are really, I think, your four main guys. Maybe a Jericho Sims if he's out there trying to rebound and he just happens to get hit around the rim. But again, not a top-notch free throw shooter, but getting to the line in itself is going to be important. On the flip side, try to control what you control and not just haplessly foul when someone blows by you and smack at the arms or anything of the sort, because you already aren't getting the calls on your own end. Don't make it more difficult for yourself by also putting yourself in foul trouble. This game against Detroit tonight, I'm interested in seeing, because Detroit, I think, has the second best defense by defensive rating in the league, behind only the Thunder. They play a very physical brand of basketball. And my mentality with reffing is always just call it the same way. If this is how the game is going to be officiated, when you call it on that side, call it the exact way on the other side, right, and we'll live with it. So I feel like, again, Detroit's one of those teams because they are physical. They do try to, use their body. They push on you. They do all the little things. I'm curious to see what that whistle looks like for the Bucks and for Detroit in this game. That's where my gripes come. Just call it even. If it's not even, then I have a problem. But this is a Bucks team that is going to struggle free throw wise. And I can understand why Giannis continuously says, like, just getting there is the hard part. If we can get to the line, we'll be okay. We just got to find a way to get there. So, like, I think those four guys we mentioned, Giannis, Kuz, Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr., that's your free throw hopes lie on them, unless you're going to get shooters being fouled like a AJ Green or a Gary Trent Jr. in that situation as well.
Yeah, and I think it was Drew Hanlon that said one of the things he tells his guys that he works with, which in fairness you don't see from the Bucks, is like, for free throws specifically, to play aggressively and be the aggressor to get there and try to draw that contact and draw that foul, but also to, for lack of a better word, embellish. Like you have to be the agitator and the aggressor to get that, and then sell it once it comes too. And that's the other thing that, like we've heard Doc complain many times, like officials have told me Giannis just plays through it. So that's why they don't call it. That's the thing I would agree with you of, like, let's just see the same thing both ways. I think that is where Bucks fans do have a legitimate gripe. The rest of it, no, it's not a league-wide conspiracy. Like, you are committing fouls here, and that's the biggest problem that they've run into. Speaking of Giannis, I don't want to spend too much time because I frankly don't have any take on it, and I think it's much ado. I mean, I hesitate to say it's much ado over nothing. I don't think this is anything that came about in the last 24 hours. The whole, like, Giannis deleted all mentions of the Bucks on social media. Differing reports on how long ago that actually happened. It's not Giannis personally doing this. I can assure you that. He has a team. But I just don't care. And I don't think it means what anyone thinks it means. I don't think anyone knows what is truly going on in the mind of Giannis other than those that he wants to know. So I don't take this or him not speaking after the game as a notion of, like, Giannis was so fed up with the Wizards game, doesn't like the team that he's asking for a trade. Like, it's not to say that the nuclear option does not occur at some point, but I don't think it's in season, and I don't think that's what this was.
Yeah, I don't either. And like you said, there were some reports that the social media cleanup happened like a week or so ago, but it wasn't noticed. And ultimately, when I don't necessarily care. But what he did leave up, it's not as if he erased all traces of the Bucks. Like, you see him on his page, you see his brothers, you see his wife, you see the Bucks 21 championship pictures from that, you see the NBA Cup wins, and you see the photos from him getting a bronze medal with Greece. Like, it is like the three biggest sport moments of his life that are still captured on that page. That you still see the pictures in Brazil where, he's holding up the Bucks jersey and all of that stuff there. Like, it just seems like a curated cleanup of the social media for whatever the reason. Couldn't tell you, but it's not something that at this moment I am reading too deep into myself either. I was more interested in Chris Paul's social media activity in the late hours than I was with what Giannis did.
All right, we'll get to. So that was the most surprising thing to me from the Wizards post-Wizards game was that KPJ was available. I mean, Giannis not talking. I read nothing into that. Giannis doesn't speak after every single game, and players don't have to talk after every game. But that KPJ did when leaving the game with an injury, like, you're inclined to think, well, that bodes well. And I know he's questionable on the injury report, so we'll see this afternoon. But yes, the more startling thing was what happened out west. And again, for as tough as it's been through these 22 games, thank your lucky stars the Clippers exist for the starts of the season that they have had in terms of record. Bradley Beal being ruled out for the remainder of the season. Who knows what's going to happen with cap circumvention that's looming over them. And then at 2:30 in the morning, they tell Chris Paul, "You're out, man." Like, they give him the Goodfellas treatment where you just walk him into the room and he thinks he's getting made here. And Chris Paul putting that on Instagram too at 2:30 in the morning, like, just found out I'm being sent home. I mean, look, as a longtime Chris Paul hater, I don't feel bad for him. You don't want to see guys go out like that, but I'm not too broken up. But the way they did this, especially when he made the announcement, 2 weeks ago, whenever the Clippers were in North Carolina, this is my final season. It was kind of assumed, and it's the homecoming. He's the greatest player in franchise history. And this is a way for him to close out his season. And then you just decide in the middle of the night, we're done here, and tell him that at that time, while they're on the road, hey, bud, it's done here. I've never seen anything like this.
the Clippers just continue to find ways to just baffle me in what they do. Like when they re-signed Blake Griffin and they had the whole thing of like they put the jersey down, like this is your jersey retirement. Imagine all this, and then they trade him to the Pistons, and now you have this with Chris Paul. Your two best players of recent franchise history, Chris Paul arguably the best, and this is how you treat them. Like that's cold. That is so cold, especially for a Clippers team. Like I know Chris Paul has been playing well, but it's not as if them waiving him or whatever they're going to do with him immediately clears up a roster space unless it's a trade. And who's trading for 41-year-old Chris Paul playing the way that he's currently playing? So like, this is all nonsensical. Like y'all are already 5 wins into the season, 5-16 at this point. Like just give your legend the respect of at least this. And for Clippers fans, like what else did you have to look for? Like most Clipper fans have already been like, I can see with this team, we ain't got it, boss. At least we can watch the Chris Paul farewell tour. And now that's gone too. Like that's crazy work.
They can't outright cut him because they only have 14 players on their team. That would drop into 13, which they can only do for short periods. They can't do it for the duration of the season, and they're hard capped where they don't have enough money to sign a free agent. So it would have to be a trade for Chris Paul. And frankly, what's the market, right? Like, you know, like I'm sure we'll hear some of it, Camille, of want to fix the turnovers. You want to fix your second unit running pretty well and struggles the bench have had. Just trade for Chris Paul.
Yeah, that ain't gonna help.
I can assure you that's not the answer. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see where he ends up and where and how it ends now for the Clippers with the end of the Chris Paul era. But more fascinating is going to be how this team responds tonight in Detroit at home against the Pistons. Mm-hmm. Again, Kevin Porter Jr. listed as questionable. Giannis listed as probable. Gary Harris listed as questionable as well. And I can't believe if you would have told any of us last February, hey, just wait until the end of the year. Like, you're going to say, man, we really need Kevin Porter Jr. Everyone would have thought you're nuts. Over the summer, too, if we would have said, you know, Gary Harris, he's going to be one of the more impactful guys you sign by the way he looks in the eye test. He's going to be pretty good for you. Would have thought you were crazy on that one, too, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Didn't expect it. Did not expect the Gary Harris. Like when he was out, I was like, dang, like kind of wish we had Gary to throw in there for at least, like, you know, 10 minutes or something like that. KPJ, I'll say this, going into the season, given the lack of ball handlers that this team had, it felt like if anything happens to Giannis, we already knew what that was. But if anything happened to any of these guards too, where it was going to be like, it might get a little tough. Didn't think it'd get this tough, but it goes to show again, like there's a big role for KPJ. There's a big role for Ryan Rollins on this team. And we listen, oh man, I'm thinking about post game already, Justin. I hope it's a pleasant one tonight. I hope it's pleasant. That's what I'll say. I hope it's pleasant.
You and me both, because if it's not, I have to be even more careful about how I work things here. That'll do it for today's show. Leave your thoughts in the comments about how they dig out of this, because as we tried to outline, there's no easy fix. There's no just do this. We didn't get so much into the lineups or anything that could change there. I did share some thoughts on that with Ty Windish, our friend at the Eurostep, on yesterday's pod. We talked quite a bit about lineups. You can check that out. But it's just, I mean, it's as simple as the cliche, play better. That's it. Like, rebound, play better. That's the way out of this. And unfortunately, it's coming against tougher competition. Leave your thoughts, though, on where the team goes from here, your thoughts on the record at the end of the month of December, and what the outlook is for this team now, where they need to be going into the new calendar year. That'll do it for today's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.